Reputation is everything. We've all heard it and we all believe it. Be it building and monitoring your online reputation or measuring your resident satisfaction in real time, we all know how important that is. The truth is, we spend too much time asking for reviews, responding to reviews, surveying our residents, and analyzing those surveys. This is all important, but there needs to be an easier way to manage it all. And in student housing, sometimes there just needs to be an automatic way of managing it, like during turn or for move-in day. Well, there is one platform out there that does just that. It's called Opinion. Opinion integrates with your property management software to automatically ask residents for reviews so you can get real-time feedback. It also works to generate more positive online reviews and ratings completely in the background without you ever having to push out an email or a text message. You can build surveys that are automatically sent out based on certain events within a tenant's lease cycle or an ad hoc community-wide survey. And it's working behind the scenes to analyze all of that feedback and present it to you in a way that you can quickly understand your property's resident satisfaction level and get insight into your team's performance. Listen, there are a lot of platforms and applications that can help you monitor and respond to your online reputation. Some will even help you generate more reviews, but Opinion allows you to do it hands-free and brings you the feedback you need in order to take meaningful action. So let Opinion do the heavy lifting and give your team more time to focus on your tenants. For more information, click on the link in the show notes or go to Opinion, which is spelled with 3 I's, opinion.com/SHI. Again, that's opinion.com/SHI. Go there today and get a special promotion for our audience members. Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees, and joining me today is Greta Dare.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Everything this fall is off to a very early start, which in a lot of ways is really good. And I think it's all good. But in some ways, it's like introducing a couple of new headaches, I think, for everybody. And but it's exciting. So I think
they're still good headaches. They're not bad things to worry about. Not having to worry about leases is never an actual bad thing. Yeah. I don't care what you say.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what the purpose of this podcast today is going to be. I don't know exactly what we'll title it because here's what's happening. We started seeing a lot of things back in July about a lot of, especially flagship tier 1 universities overbooking and having to send letters to students saying they didn't have housing, or I don't know if you caught on to it in the webinar that we're going to play for everybody here in a little bit, but there was even University of Utah sent out letters to alumni that lived in the Salt Lake City area, asking them to please house their students for like $5,000 a semester or something, like in their home. And so that's the level that we've got to. And what's amazing about that is, and I want to get into this a little bit, but it's also going to be part of one of our upcoming podcasts. That's all happening when the country is reporting, as far as higher ed is concerned, over an 8% decrease since fall of 2020. And it's even more if you go back to fall of 2019, obviously. And, so when you think about that, an 8% loss in higher ed, you think, well, geez, we ought to be really struggling. And don't get me wrong, there are some universities that and housing managers out there that are struggling, but it's not happening at the tier 1. It's not happening at these flagship universities. And, I think they kind of saw this coming, and it's, the community colleges and the tier 3 schools and the tier 2 schools, are the ones that have really taken it on the chin, and they're the ones seeing the most loss. So if you're a housing manager in one of those universities and you're dealing with that, my condolences. I understand. I'm actually right there with you from a consulting standpoint, because I've got a client that is kind of experiencing that, and it's, you just have to kind of basically grind it out.
Well, and we've all been there.
Yeah, and it just is what it is. But for everybody else, this is a fantastic time.
Like how you follow it up, you're like, but for everyone else, it totally doesn't suck as bad for you.
So be happy for the rest
be happy for everyone else.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, with, you've got several clients as well that you're helping out from a leasing and marketing standpoint. What are you seeing?
Well, not just from leasing and marketing, but yes, it's actually pretty consistent. And I was wondering that when all of the reports first started coming out about the leasing was really ramping up, that revenue, rates, all of those things. And I was like, is this going to be across the board? Is this going to be across the country? Like, how is this going to work? And I was really surprised to see that people contacting in each one of these markets, that we had leads already reaching out, prospects. We had residents that were reaching out for renewals just like out of the blue in this really fervent, urgent manner. Like, and it was like, where is this just like, is there a secret chat that everybody's communicating and they're like, you have to do this or you won't have anywhere to live?
Well,
so it's intense.
Yeah, I mean, what I was speaking to with the overbooking was, really how that just impacted everybody filling up kind of at the last minute for this fall. But that has now translated into very early lease ups. And, so my example on the overbooking was University of Utah. But then we've also got, when we look at the headlines and we start looking at pre-leasing, we look at Knoxville, Tennessee. Congrats to the Volunteers for defeating the Crimson Tide this past week. That was an incredible game, and was happy to see Tennessee's finally turning it around. So excited for those guys. But yeah, I mean, the standard there, and you and I are familiar with that market and specifically with that property. And, this was a property 5-6 years ago when it was delivered. It was delivered late, and that caused issues, even the next year filling it up. And this year,
wild difference.
Yeah. This year they were making headlines because they were literally camping out on the sidewalks and,
lined up outside like it's Black Friday.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have to say, and love all the folks over at Landmark, but any of us that are having a situation where we are having students camp out, I just feel like there's a better way to do that. I was just thinking that when I just compared it to Black Friday, and I was like, I wanted to follow it up with, I know that sounds good because then you have that urgency and you have that line. That's great until people have to spend the night outside, because now our first responsibility is always to our students and our community that we are there to serve. And having kids sleep outside is not where we're serving them. Yeah. And, maybe that was part of the strategy. I don't know. I doubt it. I think that's just probably a situation where, it could have happened to anybody in Knoxville. I don't think anybody was really, I don't want to say anticipating, that much of a surge, but and this is what happens when the university, because I put a lot of that blame at the university's feet, and I'll get into that in a minute because it's a little bit of a epidemic among universities that I want to mention. But they knew that they were accepting more than what they could house, and they ended up having to secure the Holiday Inn for their transfer students to live because there was no other housing. We're also in a situation where there's severe inflation that's happening, and that's to us in the housing world, that's somewhat great because we get to raise rents and, everybody's kind of expecting it. But for some families out there sending their kids off to college, that means they can't afford to live off campus. And so that puts even more pressure, on campus. And so, in a lot of ways, I felt like some of that could have been headed off. But anyway, those are things you have to look back and learn from those things, obviously. But yeah, let me break down a couple of things, because I don't think there's an article from August, and I'm going to mention it in this segment that we're about to play, but it was in Forbes. I think it was like August 22nd. And the title was something along the lines of record enrollment in universities across the country. And it basically goes through kind of listing some of the universities that even at that point in August were reporting, huge growth. Typically anything over 3% is, when a university grows more than 3% in 1 year, there are going to be some huge strains, even on the infrastructure of that campus. And because you got to start thinking about, how much food they're ordering for food services and all this kind of stuff that, that's another podcast. But we got to think about where that's coming from. And there's kind of two things with it. One, everybody wants to, in this article references it, and this is the only thing that it references as the reason behind it, which is we're in this post-pandemic world, or at least we think that we are, and people want to, return back to normal. And there's also been kind of this pent-up demand of, high school students that may have either they've been living at home for the past 2 years and they're over it, or, maybe they actually put off going to college and they're literally coming in as a freshman 2 years after graduating from high school. And while I believe that some of that is true, that's not where the problem comes from. The problem comes from the fact that two things. We've got an enrollment decline that everybody's been talking about that's coming in 2025. I'm sorry, not an enrollment decline, a population decline in Gen Z that's really going to hit in 2025. And everybody's kind of been preparing, okay, how are we going to compensate for that? And this is just in the US. This isn't in UK. You're actually seeing the exact opposite. And so they were already having conversations at universities about that and what that would look like. When everything happened with the pandemic, it really kind of fast forward a lot of those discussions and what those actions ended up being. But the other thing that you see is that we've talked about several times, there's been no international recruitment for the past 2 years. The international students that were here in March of 2020, that has been really the only group that we've been able to pull from. International students that have come here, since March of 2020, it's not because they met a recruiter from a U.S. university. It's because, they had family that had already gone through that experience, or close friend that had already gone through that experience. And, everything just kind of worked out from a travel standpoint that they were able to make it into this country. So those numbers have been greatly reduced. As much as especially with public universities, want to say, hey, they're there for the good of the public, they're a business at the end of the day. And it takes 4 to 5 in-state students to replace the revenue that a university gets from one international student. It typically takes 2 to 3, in some states even 4, in-state students to replace an out-of-state student. And we've got to remember that, these same recruiters have not been able to go to other states and go to the high school recruiting days. And so because of that, you've seen this huge swell at these, especially at the flagship universities in each state, because those universities have said, we've got to make up for this. And to go back to Tennessee, to use an example, you look at the other, like a UT Chattanooga, the exact opposite has happened. They've actually shrunk. And you look at, some kid in McMinnville, Tennessee, who is, graduated from high school. He's grown up, a volunteer fan. And because, he's, let's just call him a B+ student and, didn't do so well on the SATs, he was probably headed for a UT Chattanooga. But because SATs and ACT scores weren't being counted, and because these universities, not all of them necessarily relaxed their standards, they certainly did with SAT scores, but they just ended up accepting more. And that kid in Midville, Tennessee, gets acceptance letter from UT Chattanooga and from Knoxville. Well, where he's going to head. He's going to Knoxville. And so that's what's played into this. And like I said, I've got another podcast coming up in another week or so where I'm actually talking with a university administrator about that. And I'm very thankful for him coming on, because there's not, most of the university administrators I've talked to, they've all confirmed it, but they don't want to get on the podcast and talk about it. But this particular one is brave enough to do it. So be looking for that. Hopefully everybody can kind of put those, have been able to put those puzzle pieces together. But, that begs the question of, okay, how long is this going to last? And, I don't know necessarily the answer to that. What I am excited about is this is going to be a key topic that we're talking about at LeaseCon. And that's another segment that we're going to play here today as well. But LeaseCon is coming up in Charlotte this year. And I keep saying just LeaseCon, but it is LeaseCon TurnCon. So for those folks on the operations side that don't necessarily deal in leasing and marketing, this is also a conference for you too. But that is going to be happening December 6th and 7th in Charlotte. And I've got to
come see us.
Absolutely. So excited I don't have to travel for this one.
I know, right? I'm excited.
So anyway, we've got an interview with Rich Kelley that I'm going to play a little bit later. But for this next segment that I wanted to kind of be the basis for today's episode is something that I actually took from ShopTalk. Those that don't know what ShopTalk is, go to shoptalk.info for more information. But it's a monthly webinar that we produce here at Student Housing Insight for the industry. And when I met with, there's a leadership committee that we have for ShopTalk, and it is led by 6 individuals, executives that are part of the top 10 operators in the country. And one of the things that we talk about each month is, hey, what kind of topics do you guys want to talk about next month that are currently impacting things within student housing? And so back in September, they were already seeing this early leasing and thinking about how it was going to change their strategy from their initial marketing plans. And sure enough, I started getting a couple more emails from folks saying, hey, we're really seeing a lot of this. It would be good to discuss this on ShopTalk. And so that's what we did. And I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. But there's 3 folks that join us. I was really, really proud of how kind of diverse it was, from the standpoint that we had Laura Formica from Core Spaces. Many of you guys will remember Laura from when she was at Homestead. She's recently joined Core Spaces. And so they're ones that are really experiencing this. A lot of their portfolio is, core assets that are really close to campus. And then Peak, we have Alaina Jackson from PeakMade.
Yay, Alaina.
Yeah. I had not met Alaina before, so it was good to finally meet her. And Peak is kind of all over the board with, because they're mostly third party. I believe they're mostly third party.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got everything scattered from stuff that's off campus 3 miles to stuff that's, right on campus. I think they even do a little bit of P3 stuff. And so it was good to kind of get that perspective. And then we had John Rabold from Granite Student Living, who's their chief revenue officer. And they're kind of they started off as kind of the typical mom and pop operator in West Lafayette. And now they've grown with a national footprint of both purpose-built student housing as well as this scattered site student housing with single family homes and small apartment buildings. And so, that's a completely different product. And even within those portfolios, there's a lot of differences in the product. So it was good to get his feedback on this as well. But you've listened to this. Any takeaways you think, or anything you feel like the audience needs to pay close attention to?
I think that there was some great information in here. I loved the array of different companies and perspectives and markets and products. So I'm glad that this is being included in a podcast and that everyone has the opportunity to re-listen to it. So really that would be the big key takeaway. But then also, and this isn't necessarily on the topic of this specific thing, which was kind of what you talked about. If you aren't already registered for ShopTalk, go get registered. It's absolutely helpful. And every single month, hearing from people like you will hear on this, industry leaders, to be able to stay in tune of what's going on when it happens. And this is why, because this topic is currently, obviously impacting everybody. And this is a huge one. I think that, we all asked the question last year, are we going to see a huge shift in the industry from a leasing perspective, from tours, from all of these revenue perspective, rates, all of this? And that question is now being answered. And right now we're about to hear how it was impacted 3 different, companies in 3 different ways with 3 different product types, or multiple different product types rather. So yeah. Let's get into it. Let's go ahead and push play on this. John, while we're waiting here for Laura and Alaina to join, how are things going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited to bring you on because you're with Granite Student Living. You're their chief revenue officer, and Granite is such a unique company. You guys are over 10,000 beds. You're a top 10 operator, but you're doing that with, scattered sites. You're doing that with central leasing offices, and you've got PBSH communities out there. So this whole thing about leasing and how quickly things are happening this year, I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about it. Alaina and Laura, welcome.
Hello.
Well, hey, let's go ahead before I get started with it. I want to go ahead and have you guys introduce yourselves and a little bit about your company. I'd also like to find out a little bit about, or have you share a little bit about what's happened so far this year, year over year, same store, what you guys are seeing from a pre-leasing standpoint.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us, Wes. I'll jump in. My name is Laura Formica. I am the Senior Managing Director of Operations at Core Spaces, and I oversee the student housing and build-to-rent portfolios for the property management division. We have 38 student housing properties, a little over 23,000 beds. And we're seeing really great momentum so far this year across our 22 markets.
Our company was founded in 2008, based in West Lafayette, and we've since expanded to 16 other markets. I think we're in 8 states and have a little over 10,000 beds. But we manage a little over 400 properties. So anything from single family homes to larger purpose-built properties in tier 1 all the way down to tier 3 college markets.
I am Alaina Jackson. Hi. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at PeakMade, which is a fully integrated third-party management company, and I oversee the sales and marketing strategy for new developments. We manage 64 student housing properties, which is about 33,000 beds, and are currently pre-leased at about 9%, which is 3% ahead of where we were this time last year. So super excited about that. We're in line for same-store portfolio. We're currently occupied at 97%. So we had a phenomenal lease up last season, and I'm super excited to talk about this topic because it's a hot one right now.
Well, fantastic. Well, again, I'm titling this, "Is Everyone Experiencing Early Renewals and Pre-Leasing?" So not a too catchy title there, but let me kind of give some background on where this came from. Each week I meet with a leadership committee for ShopTalk and just talk with them about, hey, what's going on in your world that we want to make sure that we're talking about as far as topics for ShopTalk. And pretty much immediately, this was like, I think September 19th was when we met last, and they were already saying, hey, we know a lot of schools have overbooked. That's causing some, increased demand on our side. Really want to find out if that's changing up strategy for any of the operators out there. So I wanted to talk about that. And then literally like a week later, I get this email. Which Laura, this is probably the main reason that we went to you to be on this, since Ben stuck his hand up and said, "Hey, we've been seeing something here."
Yes, Ben volunteered me to come speak on it.
Yeah, and so Ben is their managing director for strategy and research at Core Spaces, and he says this: "We've seen leasing this year kick off sooner than any year I can remember in the industry, and I'm hearing that renewal percentages for this early in the leasing season are really high. I'm wondering if that's just a core or the entire industry. Do you think you can have renewals and pre-leasing as a topic of a future Shop Talk? It would be great to go around the horn and see how everyone is doing, and to hear if we think there might be a shift in the mindset of students now to renew earlier." So yeah, that's what today's panel is. And because we do want this to be, kind of an interactive, around the horn, as Ben said, panel, just again, want to remind everybody about both the chat as well as the Q&A, and then also the request to speak function. Would love for some of you guys to come up, especially some of the, chief operating officers and folks that are looking at this every single week. I would love for you to jump on and give us a little bit of background on what you are seeing in the market. So just hit that request to speak button, and I can bring you up. I want to go back really quick and say we did kind of see this coming. Certainly in mid-July, we started seeing a lot of reports of schools that were overbooking on housing, that were having record enrollment for freshmen. And I kind of just want to go through this a little bit and, see some of the headlines that we saw. But of course, back there on the first one, Charlotte Observer here, at a market that's close to me, and my alma mater as well. We started, back when we mentioned on the podcast, back in July, Greta, who's one of our co-hosts, found on a Reddit before it even hit the news that, this was going to end up being an issue at UNCC. And sure enough, there was a lot of publicity around it. And if there was anything left in the market, it quickly was taken up. And then just go around the country here. University of Iowa, they took a dorm offline a few years ago, and they were planning on replacing it, not ever opening it. They ended up having to open it anyway. FAMU, same thing. University of North Florida, Howard, this is in the Washington Post. I think we all know about this market. University of Tennessee in Knoxville, they had to go out and secure the Holiday Inn for students. I think they've got mostly transfer students there, but that's something I just, as a parent, I can't imagine having to send my, son or daughter off to school, and all of a sudden, where I thought they were going to stay, they're now going to have to stay in a hotel that's, kind of away from everything. So I could see the anxiety with parents, starting to say, okay, well, what are we going to do next year? But we did see several other universities go out and secure hotels as well. Texas State had to literally like a week beforehand, before school started, they had to send out assignments that, hey, we're going to put you in triples instead of doubles. And then CCU, or Coastal Carolina University, same thing. They had to do a master lease with the Pier, and then they also secured a hotel as well. The person that's actually on here, I'm going to be interviewing in in a podcast, Steve Harrison. He's their director of auxiliary services, I believe, which housing falls under that. And we're going to be talking on a podcast that should come out in another week or so, just about what caused this for universities. So make sure you tune in for that. There's some more University of Cincinnati. It just goes on and on. But hey, this one was great. I love this one. and leave it up to University of Utah to do something unique. But they were actually offering alumni to take in students into a living space and paying them $5,000 a semester. If that doesn't say community, I don't know what does. And then kind of the last thing here on August 21st, there was this Forbes article, and I'll put this out there as well because I think for a document to download. So yeah, all around, we've got schools that are overbooking. I think there's a lot of reasons behind it. A lot of people will talk about, it's somewhat related to what we're seeing with the pandemic going away. I don't know that that's necessarily it, and we'll talk more about that later. But so my first question, obviously these institutions are overbooking on-campus housing, and they're likely seeing, high occupancy off campus, and therefore students are trying to lock in housing quickly. But are you seeing this trend at other schools as well that aren't seeing the overbooking?
Yeah. I mean, our three largest markets are Purdue, Indiana University, and Virginia Tech. And we've had, a lot of success at those markets. I would say when you get into the tier 2 and tier 3 markets defined by, enrollment size, like Charlie mentioned earlier, they still seem to be much later markets. Specifically referencing University of Memphis, Indiana State University. We're still leasing, well into May and June in those markets, even though we've had quite a bit of success in Memphis, and they have an enrollment increase this year. But some of the tier 2 and tier 3 have actually seen the adverse impact. So Indiana State at one point was around 13,000 students in 2015. They're just over 8,000 right now. And it's one of our toughest markets, and there's quite a bit of competition there. So, whereas, West Lafayette, IU Bloomington, and Virginia Tech all had pretty significant enrollment increases this year, or the past couple years, really. And we've had quite a bit of pre-leasing success going into it. Right now in West Lafayette, we're about 4% ahead of where we were last year. And that date is backdated by 2 weeks. So we're about 45% pre-leased for our pedestrian to campus in West Lafayette, and about 25% in IU Bloomington.
Alaina, we can go to you next.
Yeah. So we're also, seeing customers aggressively pursue housing options. We were pre-leased last year at 90% before June. So I think we're seeing that same thing, trend now. We're having very successful lease launches and priority days again this year. Students are wanting to lock in that lowest rate before they increase. And parents and guarantors, prepared themselves for that to happen. They're well aware of some of the significant increases that we're seeing across the country. So off-campus housing, because of the record-breaking leasing numbers we saw last season, we were able to learn a lot about our renter and what they want, and that they'll continue to make these decisions a lot earlier. We had... What
do they want, Alaina?
Well, they want the transparency. They want us to be upfront about when those rates are going to increase. They are starting very early, Wes, with their search. They're all over our websites, all of our social media platforms, doing their due diligence to find where they want to live so that they can lock in that pricing. And so I think we'll continue to see that just, happen. They want to jump at the chance to lock in the best price. So
are they asking, because in my mindset, it's, from a landlord perspective, when you talk about those rates going up, it's really determined on, velocity and how pre-leased you are. From a student's perspective, it's more of, hey, what date? And we don't know when that date's happening. So is there anything that you're doing to combat that, or are you just using it to build urgency?
Yeah, so we're using it to create urgency. And I think it depends on the market, because not all markets, respond to deadlines. Some of them, we simply just have to let them know we have X amount of bed space is left in a specific floor plan and they hop all over that. But yeah, that language is typically works really well to create the urgency. It's all about the price. So as long as we're transparent with when those rates are going to go up, if we know that in a specific market or how many spots are left, I think that we'll continue to see them, want to lease faster.
Gotcha. Laura, how about you? Are you seeing it outside of, obviously we had the email from Ben that I read out, but schools that aren't overbooking, are you seeing this kind of urgency with those students as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the internal conversations we've been having is, yes, there's the housing shortages, and then there's not enough desirable housing. So not enough modern housing with bed bath parity and the true product that students want. I think that in addition to that, and Alaina's kind of touching on it, you've got the impending recession and inflation, and prices just continue to rise. So I think parents have accepted the fact that rates are going up. And when you message, this is the low it's going to be, and then we're going to continue to increase prices from here, they expect it. And there's that rush to lock in at the best rates possible. So we're seeing that. Charlie touched on some of these markets, but Champaign, we're 74% pre-leased, 15% of prior year, and we are trending towards over a 10% rate increase. So we've already pushed rates there over 5 times. Similar situation in Lexington, we're 70% pre-leased, 43% ahead of this time last year.
Wow.
And trending towards a 7% increase. So Core did something interesting this year, and we've certainly tried it. I've tried this in other markets and in former roles, but they launched renewals on move-in day. And I think, again, the current climate, the economy, the inflation, like for parents to say, okay, I can sign now, be done with it, not have to worry about it, and this is the lowest option I'm going to have. I think that was a huge success and started us off really strong.
Gotcha. So that ties back into, my next question that I was going to ask you in regards to revenue management. In addition to Student Housing Insight, I also do asset management for some clients. And we even had a property that, it leased up kind of quick last year, but then they started it on October 1st. And this year the manager, said, hey, I really think we need to start a week early. And just like, okay, whatever. And I know he knows his market. So we said, let's go ahead and jump on it. And he reached 43% last week. And this is a tier 3 market that he's in. But we were supposed to meet every week to talk about, climbing that leasing ladder and triggering those different rental tiers. We had to meet 5 days straight to talk about it because that's just how quick everything was going. I'm just curious, how are you guys managing that?
Yeah, so I'll start with this one. So we actually recently, I joined the company about 6 weeks ago, and we recently went through a little bit of a restructure in terms of roles and responsibilities, and we created a whole new division focused solely on revenue optimization and leasing. So we have a managing director of revenue optimization, and her sole priority is looking at our rates and our tiers on a weekly basis and how are we optimizing our pricing strategy and where do we need to pivot. I think to Ashley's question in the panel, in the chat, as to the panel's thoughts on using spots versus deadlines. Right now, we're doing a combination of both, but I think it's really important right now to be flexible. Don't over communicate in terms of quantities and deadlines and lock yourself into something when you have this opportunity to pivot and get a little more aggressive. So our revenue optimization team is analyzing this, looking at strategy, sending out weekly updates on where we need to push. And I think that's going to be a game changer, and something that's really important is to leave that flexibility and ability to pivot and continue to push.
Alaina or John?
I'll go. So our teams are constantly watching their markets and how they're doing, how net effective rate is changing. And we're partnering with our clients to push past those tiers wherever we can. Our portfolio, like I said, we've seen some significant increases across the board. And so I think it's encouraging to the teams to see that, because, we're all about getting to the coin. So yes, when we have the opportunity to push, we will. But our teams monitor that every single week.
Gotcha. John.
Yeah, we meet weekly by market with the leasing team and the leadership team to determine, where are we at in comparison to recent history, which we try to document thoroughly. And conversely, if we get to a point where a certain property is trailing where it's historically been, obviously you have the opposite effect of needing to potentially lower rates, but we're not experiencing that right now. Everything's in question about, do we continue to raise? And obviously it's floor plan specific. Right now we're seeing a lot of our 3s and 4s fly off the shelf, and 1s typically go a little later for us, unless they're just in a great location. But I kind of like the idea of, securing spots versus deadlines, which is, we've seen a decent amount of success with that as well. But most of our stuff is just data driven based on current market conditions and historical leasing progress.
Yeah, a couple of things from the audience that have put in some questions, and also released a poll called "Have you started pre-leasing for fall 23 yet?" And so far, 18% have just said their renewal campaign. 18% said not yet, and 63% have said full steam ahead. So that gives you some indication. But also, the thing going back to the spots. Ashley Dukes, I believe is the last name. She asked, what are the panel's thoughts on using spots versus deadlines in marketing? So, John, you answered that question. Alaina and Laura, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so we've done both. I think the primary strategy, to John's point, is really focused on tiers and quantities, but it's always helpful to have a deadline to push the message out to students and tie it to an event and really drive some momentum that way, because sometimes quantities, it means nothing to them. They need to know, like, end of the month, you've got till the end of the month, or you've got till the 15th or whatever. So we definitely are using a combination of both.
Same. So totally agree with Laura. I think it depends on the market, depends on the property. And we do the same. Some of our properties, we use that deadline to create the urgency, but sometimes it doesn't work. And it's just much more beneficial to be able to say X amount of spots in the 4x2 or the 4x4 or whatever before, the rate will go up or we no longer have them. So it just depends on the market.
Gotcha. Well, John, I want to go back to that specific question that I kind of led with as we were, opening up this panel. And before I ask that, just want to, put out there to everybody, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. And also, if you want to come onto the virtual stage and ask our panel something or share with the audience how your property or how your company is doing with the leasing season this year, please do that. But John, like you said, you've got a mixed, a portfolio where, we talk about going and buying, a new property somewhere. You guys, today you're in Blacksburg, I know, and you guys went into Blacksburg last year and actually bought a property management company. And so you're dealing in these different markets, both with scattered site, where it could be single family home, to small apartment buildings, to you guys also manage the annex portfolio, which is a lot of tier 3, but they're purpose-built student housing, typically 200 to 400 beds max. I'm just interested in finding out are you seeing anything between the different product types this year versus last year that's different?
Yeah, we're trending a little bit ahead, not significantly on some of the purpose-built properties in our large markets that's pedestrian to campus. Our largest property in West Lafayette is about 50% pre-leased, about 5 to 10% ahead of where it was last year. I would say we are seeing pretty considerable pace with anything above a 2-bed pedestrian to campus in our top tier markets. 1 beds or non-pedestrian seems to be leasing kind of on pace where it was last year, maybe a little bit ahead. And rental rate increases, probably about 7% plus. The tier 2, tier 3 markets, I mean, we just have really always, at least the ones we're in, have struggled to get much momentum at the same timing that we're seeing in places like a Purdue, IU, or Virginia Tech. Maybe it's because in some of these markets like Indiana State, there's more supply than there is demand, which is not the case in a lot of our other markets. Memphis, we got to 100% in Memphis, but it was super slow. I mean, it's almost like it's an afterthought for housing when they come back from winter break. So, and then the tier 3 markets, some of those take off a lot faster than others. And typically it's purpose-built stuff that's close to campus, but oftentimes it's not in competition with anything. Sometimes we're in competition with a couple single family houses in that market, but the enrollment at these places is maybe 5,000 students. So they're quite a bit different in demand and timing. But our tier 1 markets, especially this year, but the past couple of years have really been strong early out the gate.
Gotcha. Well, guys, again, I want to open it up for any questions. I haven't seen anything come through the Q&A or anybody raise your hand, but if you've got questions or want to comment, would love to hear what you've got to say. But another question that I had for the panel is, have you set any kind of, I guess, predetermined deadline as to that may have been different, maybe not necessarily in July, but maybe, going back to June and thinking, and Laura, I know this is a little bit different for you because you were on vacation all summer.
Yep.
But, when you're thinking about, okay, in June, this is, I'm putting together my marketing plan, this is how we're going to come out of the gate. And, you want to be, X at this particular property or across the portfolio by such and such a date. Have you guys drastically changed that at all based on what you've seen in the past, 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah. So I think across the board, because our sites are, having larger lead targets and lease targets, renewal targets earlier, we're doing that as a portfolio. So all of those benchmarks, obviously, we'll see velocity a lot faster in because of our success that we had this last year and what we're seeing now. We've been able to adjust not only that target-wise, but also our strategy. So our renewal strategy and our new leasing strategy in some of the early markets, we've been able to just kind of launch and deploy some of those tactics earlier to try to get some of that. A really good example is that we have an early renewal incentive program. It's called the Insider Club. And our properties, some of our properties were able to launch that, at least 30 days prior to when they did last year, this time, to drive that renewal, kick. So, I think we'll continue to see that. But most importantly, people they're lined up, they're ready, they want to secure their same spot, all of that. So it's working that we started earlier. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Gotcha. Well, we do have a guest that just joined us, Adam Byerly with The Price Company. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So yeah, I don't know if you've got a question or if you just want to.
No, I figured I'd just get on and share some of our sort of story to reinforce a little bit about what Laura and John and Alaina have said. We're seeing similar things, but I think what's really cool about our stuff is that, we're about 20% or so pre-leased, which is about 5% or so ahead of where we were at this time last year. I've been telling all of my folks when it comes to rate increases that this year, 10 is the new 5, right? So if you were going to get 5 last year, this year you're expected to get 10. And so that's the type of rent increases that we're seeing in some of these major primary markets. And, our average is probably going to be somewhere around 6.5, but we have some older garden style stuff versus some new high rise, pedestrian right across the street from campus. But what's really interesting is that I don't think I have any properties at 20% pre-leased. I either have them at 0, but they haven't even started, or I have them at 65, 75, 85% pre-leased already. So some of these properties we've had to shut off online leasing for like an hour or two until we can really get things and figure out where we are on a day. You talk about daily tiers. We were doing hourly tiers for a couple properties. So that's sort of the theme of this year's leasing so far.
Gotcha. Well, really quick, I've got a question here from Nick Kaminsky. He says, how is the age of the property impact? And I'm sorry, Nick, my screen is really far away from me. But I believe you're asking how's the age of the property impacting leasing this year? Which is that I have seen some properties in the past couple of weeks that, they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're talking about record leasing for the first time in 3 or 4 years. So have you guys got any comments on the age of the property at all?
For us, Wes, we have a wide range, so I think it's a good position for us to speak in, and it's all about market. I mean, for example, in Clemson, we have a 20-year-old property that's 4 miles away from campus that's already almost 30% pre-leased, and that deal has never been that far ahead. So there's nothing special about it either. And so people need a spot to live in the Clemson market, and it doesn't matter. They're going for where they want to go. And ultimately age, it helps if you're new, obviously. But some of these stories you're seeing about people camping out for properties, they're not brand new, right? I mean, so it's just all about, location, reputation, and then just market urgency. So,
gotcha. Got a question from Randall Paulison to the group. Has anyone else seen Greek life bounce back? I'm assuming he just means the fraternities and sororities, or maybe you're talking about the housing specifically, Randy. But said we are noticing larger recruiting classes bouncing back from COVID. Is that helping at all with driving any of the traffic? Anybody notice anything with that?
I don't know that I've noticed it necessarily increasing traffic as much as, we do get benefited when a fraternity gets kicked off campus, which, is unfortunate when that happens, but it does seem to create a funnel. And once they're in, if they like where they're living, they're more likely to recruit their friends. But the IU Bloomington market has a large Greek community, and I think there is record enrollments in some of those houses that they can't house everybody that's in the fraternity or sorority. So I think we do benefit from that, but I'm not sure what the number is.
Yeah, I would agree with John, and I think maybe even more impactful to occupancy and just post-COVID rebounding is the return of international students. I was in Seattle this weekend, where we have a high international population, and we were doing a move in there. And I don't have exact data to this, although I'm curious where we are versus where we were in 2020 and 2021. It feels like, that population has returned, which I think is going to help tremendously.
So I know we're at the top of the hour here. I've got one more question from Teresa Zapatas at RPM. She mentions currently an article that's out there, I think from Madison, Wisconsin, about just students becoming vocal about the frustration of rents increasing so much. What kind of feedback are you guys getting when it comes to rates and affordability?
Well, one thing we did early on, and I thought that this was really smart, was send out a letter basically educating the residents about increases to come and kind of the state of rental rates across the country. So we preempted that. I think you're going to have that across the board. I think, to Ashley's other point here in the chat, I think you're going to get pushback when you're an older property with maybe some deferred maintenance or no big capital strategy to kind of justify it. But I think for us, it was being proactive and communicating and educating residents. So we haven't seen that per se, but we're still early.
Yeah. Alaina?
Same. So we I haven't really seen any, it hasn't been crazy pushback, but like we talked about earlier in the conversation, I think parents and guarantors were expecting this because of inflation, because of what's happening everywhere. And so I don't think people have been pushing back much for us. They just, like I said, as long as we're being transparent about when those increases are going to happen as best we can, typically, I don't think we've gotten many complaints.
Gotcha. Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. I know we could talk about this for probably another hour, and we're getting some pretty good feedback in the chat now. But we've got to end it for the day. So, panel, I appreciate you guys coming on. Adam, thanks for coming in as well. A couple of just closing announcements for you guys. One, make sure that you are sharing ShopTalk with your colleagues and ask them to register. Want to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing. And, this is a time for the industry to kind of come together each month and talk about what's happening. So if you've got colleagues that don't know about ShopTalk, make sure that you share that with them. The next ShopTalk is going to be Thursday, November 10th. It is going to move to a Thursday for November because November 8th is election day. And I know many of the companies are now giving employees off for election day. And we wanted to obviously consider that and how that may play into someone's decision to attend or to vote. So we will be doing that on Thursday, November 10th. Again, guys, the replay on this will be up on our website. Again, a big thanks to Laura, Alaina, and John for that. Also for Adam jumping in to give his comments. That's one thing about ShopTalk. We want it to be really interactive. And so don't get me wrong, the chat is pretty interactive and everybody talking to each other. Yeah, everybody talking to each other on the chat. But yeah, we want this to be something where, feel very comfortable, regardless if you're at the site level or in the C-suite, and you want to kind of put your 2 cents in on what you're experiencing. That's what we've built ShopTalk for. So yeah, please go register if you're not registered for that already. So the audience is actually getting 2 segments for the price of 1 today, and we've got an interview with Rich Kelley talking about the upcoming conference that has been going on for about 4 years now. I'm really starting to love this conference. How about you?
Oh, 100%. Every year it definitely gets better. And every year I'm excited that it's still happening. I think it's incredible and I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah. And we're doing a lot of collaborating, I guess is the best way of putting it, with Rich and the student housing business team, France Media team, interface conference group team, and helping them with some of the content, the topics, the panel selection. And so we did that last year. Happy to be doing that again this year, especially given the fact that it's in our backyard here in Charlotte. But yeah, LeaseCon, TurnCon, it is December 6th and 7th. You've been here for a few years now in the Charlotte area. That week in December is, it's pretty nice, right?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. That's one of I was glad that it was going to be in Charlotte because it's not an overwhelming place. It's pretty easy to fly in and out of. And the weather is mild. So there's typically not any real concerns. It's not one of those situations where you're like, it's going to be hot and muggy, because that's always the thing, right? Where everybody has a suit and jacket on. And then as soon as you walk outside, it's like, woof. Yeah. And you're dying. And so, no, you're not really it snows like once in a blue moon, and that's not really going to be a major concern. But yeah, no, I think it's great.
It's a good conference from the standpoint that it's kind of speaking to everybody on the operation side, right? Mm-hmm. It does have that kind of peculiar name to it, LeaseCon, TurnCon. We've got to come up with a better name. But all of that aside, it is something that there's going to be great content, regardless if you're on the leasing and marketing side of operations. And look, all of us are a part of Turn. It's not just a maintenance facility, type of thing. It never has been.
God, no, that's a whole industry. That's all of us.
Yeah.
That's all hands on deck.
Yeah. Except some of those people that end up somehow taking vacation during turn, which
I didn't even know that was allowed. Is that allowed?
There was a whole online discussion about this over the summer.
What?
Yeah, I probably need to update you about it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All I can say is if you're privileged enough to be able to take a vacation during that time, you should probably just stay off of social media about it. Don't post your vacation pictures. It's just it doesn't do a whole lot for morale. But anyway, yeah, that was a whole thing in our groups. So, but yeah, no, TurnCon, or I should say Turn, is definitely, it's always all hands on deck. It's always everybody pitching in to help out and playing some kind of role. So that's another reason we wanted to combine this conference and make sure that, because it's a perfect time to be talking about Turn. There's everything from, supply chain issues that we've been dealing with. If there's any kind of updates that any of the property management software companies are doing, or groups like Easy Turn are doing, it's a great time for them to come in and talk about it and share it with others. And also to give feedback to them of, hey, we experienced this in Turn. There needs to be a fix to it. There needs to be a solution that you can provide, be it from, furniture installs to, actually using a turn board. Right. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
I am too. I think that one of the things that I was just thinking about, kind of given the, number of conferences of all different, the range of organizations and size, one of the biggest differences I think with LeaseCon, TurnCon is the level of interactivity that you get to have with people, and then also the kind of information that's covered and the timing of it. It's entirely different than any other conference. And that's going all the way back to like my leasing consultant and leasing manager days, when, it was like the local apartment association. Cause to compare it to like the Indiana Apartment Association, the big conference that they had there. And, you're still in a room of 40 or 50 people. And I still loved that conference that was put on there. I learned really great fair housing stuff. However, this is, it's real leasing and marketing information, social media information, that kind of stuff that you can use and implement as soon as you get back to your property or back to your office. And then when it, like you said, when it comes to, or all of the, you can ask real questions, you can interact with those people because it feels more intimate and interactive. And then also for the smaller ones where it's smaller groups of people of 20 or less, and it's very interactive. And being able to do that, you really walk away feeling like it was enriching, and you gained so much from it. And it's like you can always feel like it was more networking, or it was just, it's different. And so I highly recommend it.
Yeah. And it's a different kind of networking. I mean, because
oh yeah, the networking's still there.
There's other things that there's other conferences that we talk about on the show that, we definitely prop up and love a lot, but everybody knows that you're not necessarily going there, for
content,
maybe new content, because there's some things that are timely that, will end up being topics on those discussions. But for the most part, they're business development type conferences, and that's the reason they attract so much. And so no one's going to put a negative spin on anything. They're there to promote their company and things that they're doing. And so even on the panels, you're not going to get anybody that's going to say, oh man, we had this horrible issue, and even if they responded great to it, and there's a great story there, it may not put that company in the best of light, and so they're just not going to talk about it. And this is a conference where we're going to talk about what the issues were, the things that are that there needs to be solutions to. And
that was the exact word I had in my head. I was like, it feels more solutions focused and informational and educational, and that was something that we absolutely needed, and so it's different.
Yeah, and And because of that, this is for any and everybody, from site level to C-suite. And I really encourage the folks in the C-suite. This is also a conference that you should be involved in from a standpoint of, passing some things on to the younger folks, to the folks that are just starting out their careers. Or I just think it's something that the executives in this industry really need to grasp and, see it as a way that, they can, just a way that they can impact, the future CEOs and VPs. Right. So yeah, I encourage everybody, regardless if you're at the site level, if you're, in that mid level, as a regional manager, portfolio manager, this is the conference that you want to go to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's get to this interview with Rich. Well, Rich, thanks so much for joining. I wish we could have done this live on ShopTalk, but I'll take a recording any day. So thanks for taking some time out on your Friday. Before we even get started talking about LeaseCon, want to thank you for everything student housing business and France Media is doing for certainly for our industry, but also you guys had a fantastic interface back in May down in Austin. So really appreciate that. Maybe there's some things on that you may want to talk a little bit about, but I really wanted to focus on LeaseCon and what's now being called LeaseCon TurnCon. And, with that being said, I'll just hand it over to you.
Well, thanks, Wes, and thanks for having me, and congratulations on ShopTalk and how well that's going. So this will be our fourth annual LeaseCon TurnCon. Did have one hiatus year there in COVID in 2020, and we're bringing it to your hometown. We're coming to Charlotte this year, so we're excited to change things up from a location standpoint. Yes, I don't know if I've told you, Wes, but the cocktail reception is actually at your house, so you might want to tell your wife to start cleaning and prepping things. No, we're going to be downtown in Charlotte. Great hotel where we've done some things before. The space should work really well for LeaseCon. And, what can you say about today's leasing environment? Things are pretty rosy, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of interesting things to still talk about, as well as speculate about, what may come in the future. So I think, from a leasing and marketing standpoint, it's a very exciting time. I know the owners and operators in the space are fired up because leasing is going so well. So it should be a lot of good things to talk about. And then on the Turn side, Turn is always going to be with us. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it better and how to do it more effectively. And I think the industry is figuring that out. And the TurnCon part of the show will be focusing on that and just, tips for better Turn prep, technology that can help you with Turn. What's up on the supply chain front? Are things finally getting better? What might be the case in, 5-6 months when Turn actually starts coming around, or you're doing ordering now? So no shortage of good stuff to talk about.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, Charlotte, it's going to be at the downtown or the Uptown Hilton. Is that correct?
Yes, the Hilton, I think they call it Hilton Center City, Charlotte, or Hilton Charlotte Center City.
And December 6th and 7th?
Yes, so we will start with roundtables on the afternoon of the 6th, and then the cocktail reception, opening reception on the evening of the 6th, and then full day, 8 to 3 on December 7th.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. As far as registration, and I know that you guys typically do some pretty fantastic group rates when it comes to this conference. Can you give us a little bit of a lowdown on that and where folks can go to register?
Sure. We have our early bird registration rate available till the end of the month. I think it's open till the 27th of October. And, where people can register is just go to interfaceconferencegroup.com, click on LeaseCon TurnCon, and then just kind of follow the prompts. And there's a tab at the top of the website, the conference website, for registration, pricing, and then to register. One thing I do want to point out, Wes, because we've done this every year and we've had companies take us up on it every year, is, we really encourage owners and operators to bring your team, bring a bunch of folks from the corporate level and bring hopefully a lot of folks from the site level. And we are more than happy to incentivize that through, group registration discounts, things like that. Because I just, when you do a conference, it's really the more the merrier. It's more people that everyone's there to network with, to learn from. And this really is an event that's a learning experience. And I think, people can really kind of reward some of their team members who've been doing a great job by bringing them to an event like this and giving them exposure to a lot of great information and a lot of great networking.
Well, great. Well, I'm excited about it. I've already, talked to a few of the sponsors and folks that are looking to attend, and I think it's going to be, the best one that we've had yet. And looking forward to seeing you in December.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to coming to your city. And yeah, I would just say, the leasing environment is going so well right now that I think there should be a lot of very positive discussion, as well as, obviously think about the future, because circumstances change and we have to plan and prepare for that. So the leasing and marketing game is always going on, and it evolves and takes different twists and turns. And right now we're in a great path, so we should have a lot of fun things to talk about.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate it, Rich.
Wes, thank you for the opportunity. Again, congrats with ShopTalk, and let's hope that this great run that the industry's on keeps going on.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Wes.
Well, again, make sure that you get the LeaseCon, TurnCon. It is, if you're listening to this, I believe it's next Thursday. I think it's October 27th, I believe. Maybe Rich said it in the segment. I just didn't catch it. But that's when the early bird special goes. And look, if you are, if you've got a team that you want to bring to this, give Rich a call, because they are more than happy to, work out some type of group discount for bringing a group of people. And they're very generous with that. So that also being said, we have some tickets that we're going to be giving away as well. They've been gracious enough to give us some free tickets to give out to the audience. So I'm not going to announce that, but you need to be paying attention to our Instagram, and we'll make some announcements there so you can possibly pick up a free ticket.
Aren't you so excited you stuck around for the outro?
Well, guys, thanks so much. Again, make sure that you are registered for ShopTalk at shoptalk.info. Please like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, and also share it with your friends. Greta, thanks so much.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
It's always easier doing these things when you're here.
Aw, thanks.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.